Hi, and welcome back to Brentwood Stories. Our Quarantine Conversations podcast are rarely just about the quarantine itself. Instead, these podcasts have been an opportunity for me, Peter, and our guests to take pause and get to know each other on a deeper level. Perhaps one of the inadvertent benefits of the quarantine is just that. It has been an opportunity to slow down and catch up with our friends and neighbors. When we take the time to have these conversations, we learn things about one another that may have gone ignored otherwise. Today's guest is a longtime member of the library and a passionate supporter of our Seed Library program. For many members of the Brentwood Library, she is a familiar face. I am happy to welcome Tuty to Brentwood Stories.
My name is Tuty, and I have been in the Bayshore Brentwood area since 2014. And I am a web admin and have been a very faithful Brentwood Library patron.
Have you noticed a lot of changes in the library since you've come on by, besides the obvious changes that have come by recently?
First of all, I like Brentwood area because it's diversity. And so I notice it's even more diverse than when I came in 2013. So it's been, to me, I came up from a very diverse background, and all areas that I've lived in the United States is always diverse. And so that's how I prefer it. You know, I've been to different libraries, and I'm always just drawn that Brentwood is my home library.
It's a great library.
Yes, it's even more beautiful now.
Now, maybe we could talk a little bit about the beginning of the quarantine, and if it's a significant part of your story, maybe you could talk about how it affected you vis-a-vis your work life as well. But take us through maybe that. What would you think is the very first day that you really felt significantly affected by the quarantine?
Well, I typically follow the news. So when the outbreak started back in Wuhan, China, I started to be concerned because I know that there are a lot of international traffic from China to the US, vice versa. But we've never been hit with something like, for example, SARS or bird flu or H1N1 and so on and so forth. It didn't seem to have that much impact to the US. But then when it started to branch out, to Italy and things like that, and to see the devastation that this virus caused, I became very concerned. And so when the lockdown actually happened, I was actually relieved because I felt that, if we didn't do what other countries did to prevent it from having a massive outbreak throughout the country, we could be in trouble because New York is a very dense place. So when it actually happened, I was kind of relieved, even though I don't like the idea of being quarantined, but I understand that is a necessity for all of us to be safe and to minimize casualties as much as we could. So that's what I feel.
Did the onset of the quarantine have any significant effect on your day-to-day work life at all?
Well, as far as daily routine, I have more time than before because, for example, since my work is quite mobile, I can work anywhere. I could work at the libraries. I could work at a Starbucks if I want to. So when that is shut off, then my option of working at the library, which I actually like because, there's some quiet places I can go to. So that's something that is slightly affecting my work. So I ended up just working from home, and I'm lucky that I'm able to do so. My daughter, however, because she works in a restaurant, then she basically just quarantined at home because the restaurant was just shut down. And so I pick up, gardening is something that I've always loved and had no time practically because of my routine. So the quarantine time gave me the opportunity to really work and pay attention to my garden. So that's how this pandemic affected me. And, there's a positive and there is the negative, and the positive is I'm able to do gardening. And thanks to the seed library that we have, I'm able to tend many of the plants that I receive, the seeds that I receive from the library.
How instrumental would you say the library seed program was in that? Was it something that just happened to be coincidentally beneficial?
Well, the seed library program started just right before the shutdown, the quarantine period. So I had started with, several seeds, and it was still pretty cold at that time. There was no, it's not a safe time to put my plants into the garden yet. So I started indoors, and so I really enjoyed, tending them from the seed, and instead of buying plants from big box stores. So I really thank the seed library people. Thank you, Peter, for having this program in our library. Thus, I have really something to do during the shutdown.
Thank you, Tuty. And I'd have to say also, Tuty's been so important to getting the seed library started. And about, I think the year before that also, you had helped us start the first herb walk at the library.
Correct.
And that was before the seed library started, but it got us thinking about all of those type of programs.
Right. Our guests, among others, which we had the year before and this year also, even though the format is different, last year was in person and this year is virtual, is Ellen Kamai. She has a PhD and is also a registered nurse who is very much encouraging us to live more naturally, more holistically. So, among others, is to eat organic food. And we were lucky that we were able to receive some organic seeds. I'm not sure from which organization that gave us the seeds, or we purchased. You guys purchased the seeds from, but
that was
Steph. I think it was Steph. I think the name of the person was Steph.
That was Steph Gaylor, and she has Invincible Summer Farms, I think it's called.
Right. And so she actually, started quite a number of Brentwood Library patrons to get real interest in organic gardening and not choosing something that is hybrid or genetically modified in terms of more of an engineering instead of like crossbreeding and to produce something better. But we're trying to keep the plants as natural and organic as possible.
So glad that you've been enjoying and taking part all of our programs.
Oh yeah, I enjoy just about every program that we have in the Seed Library program, whether the seed parts itself, also the programs that we have on Seed Saturdays. Many of them are something that are very beneficial to all of us. Not just something to eat. Like plants that we can harvest for our food, but also the seeds that would be good for pollinators, because Long Island experienced a downturn in terms of pollinators, whether it's bees or butterflies. So during this pandemic, all these interests, I think, flourish. If you agree, Peter.
Yeah, that's been one of the great, I guess, advantages of this whole thing, that people have been able to develop certain interests.
Right.
Where did you were mentioning that you came to Long Island in 2013?
Right.
Where did you come from before then?
Oh, we used to live in the state of Washington.
Oh, Washington.
Yeah. So
Very
we decided
rainy.
to move to the East Coast, and this is where we ended up.
Oh, that's a big technology state too.
Yes.
Is that why you liked Washington originally? Because you were like into technology?
Yes.
Oh,
And on the east side will be, New York and Massachusetts, those areas. A little bit in Virginia if we're in the like military industry, but I am not. And so, New York offers more opportunities, and they're more tech savvy, a lot more tech savvy people in New York and Massachusetts.
oh, very cool.
Is there a big culture shock when you come from Washington over to New York?
Yes, the speed. The speed of people, especially if I go to the city, it was just mind-boggling. Like everybody's in a rush and everybody seems to be a lot more stressed out on the East Coast than they are in the West Coast. It's more laid back. We don't drive. We didn't drive as aggressively in the West Coast, but I've met some wonderful people in New York, and really genuinely caring, despite the fact that they always say, "Oh, the New Yorkers are rude and this and that," but I found it different. I've met wonderful people, and among others are my friends here at the library. I've been pretty blessed to meet all of you. And Long Island is not as rush as it is in the borough. Let's put it that way.
You know what I can't help but think of? It's you moved between two great 1990s sitcoms, Frasier with Seattle, Washington, to
Right.
the New York City Central Perk of the Friends.
Yeah. Yep. I'm from a different genre, of course. Let's not date myself. But, yeah, it's definitely a different type of culture, a different type of people. But overall, there's no perfect place. We all have our challenges in any of the places that we live in. But so far, it's been 7 years.
Do you keep in touch with a lot of folks from over in Washington still?
Not very much, because most of our friends and all that, they have their own lives, and the kids are grown and all that, and Some of them moved to different state as well. So not much, only one or two families that we're still in touch, every so often. And that's another thing too, that during this pandemic is I learned new skills as, for example, hosting Zoom meeting for families, Zoom meeting for like choir. I happen to be a member of choir at the church, and that is something we miss, to be able to practice together. But during the pandemic, we can't do it, and we're not supposed to, because singing is one of the avenue where you can really spread the virus pretty significantly, because we breathe and sing loud, and thus the spraying and all that. So that is something that we miss. So we decided, okay, we can't meet, so we meet through Zoom. So there's a new skill that I acquired during this pandemic, to reconnect with friends, families, and also families around the world, basically, and friends around the world that have been missing each other, and because of this facility, and everybody is on Zoom, so they're not like freaked out, like, oh, come on, let's try this, and trying to not be intimidated by technology. Instead, we've learned to live with technology so that we can still connect, and not feel so isolated.
Where are some of the places that people live that you reconnected with?
Many places, in Australia,
Oh, wow.
in New Zealand, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and Singapore.
Wow.
So it's a pretty big
The other side of the
get-together.
world.
Yes, arranging time to meet it quite be challenging, and luckily we have an app where we can just punch in the number, time zone, and things like that, and then we can post it in the Zoom invitation and say, okay, your time zone, it'll be at 11, then at night, and then in the other side of the world, it'll be 11 o'clock in the morning. So, it's challenging, but it's fun. It's keeping the mind connected.
Yeah, that's great. Peter,
Yes.
I don't know if it's too soon, but Tuty was mentioning food earlier, and I was feeling tempted to ask that food question that we like to ask.
I was going to ever so gracefully edge it in there.
Oh, and I just barreled in.
I think we had a good segue before, and I'm glad that we're actually getting to this before we veer too much away from it. I was going to ask if any of the or at least how much of the gardening that you've been doing at home has been working its way into your cuisine.
Absolutely. One of the objectives, other than expanding my hobby, I like flowers. I like food also. Because many people feel frustrated during the shutdown because they can't go to the restaurants. That has never been my case. I cook 98% of the time. Only 2%. Occasionally, I'd go to eat out, but for the most part, I cook. And so, in my gardening effort, I try to cook as many things based on the seeds that I receive and I grow. And I was able to grow organically. And the only way that you eat something organic is if you grow it yourself. When you go to a store buying organic this, organic that at X amount of dollar, much more expensive. There is no 100% guarantee because you don't know the kind of soil, you don't know what they put in there. So with my garden, I was able to harvest the cucumbers, the tomatoes, the chilies, and the chards and kale and things like that. Some are more successful than the others. Like my okra didn't thrive at the beginning because I guess as a learning process, I started the seeds a little early, so it didn't thrive and it died before it was time to transplant it to the garden. So I had a late okra second attempt, which I'm hoping I can cook before the frost hits.
Oh.
Yeah, but I make salsa. I made salad with all these vegetables that I grew. So it was so much different when you buy cucumber from the store versus the cucumber that you get from your garden, just freshly picked, and you eat it. It just tastes so much better. It's like almost a live food that you eat, a live vegetable, so to speak. So I really enjoyed this part of gardening, that I'm able to also share some of the food that I harvested with friends and families.
Did the garden survive the hurricane that we had?
The Isaiah?
Yeah.
A little bit of damage. It was like there was an evening wind that came, and then I look at my garden and I said, "Oh my goodness!" Some of the plants started, falling. So I fixed it before the actual hurricane or tropical storm hit again, and so thankfully it was not that much damage.
That's really.
Yeah, I was happy. I was happy because it was, tending the garden every day. I spent at least 1 hour each day to take care of it, make sure that there was adequate pest control and things like that. But sometimes,
that's good, an hour a day.
yeah. So I don't want to use pesticide to the best that I can. So I really, and fungicide, because that was one of my challenge. Right after the hurricane, the following day it hit, the fungus hit basically my cucumber plants. And I had to cut down a lot of the leaves that were affected and apply some natural fungicide. And to this day, the cucumber is thriving. So I'm happy. It's on its last legs, and I expect that they slow down significantly. And I left one cucumber to hopefully I can save the seeds.
Will there be any indoor gardening for the wintertime?
That's a good question because I don't have much room indoors for my plants. I wish I could. I'm not sure what I am going to keep inside. Probably my chilies. I got what they call is Naga chili from one of the Brentwood patron too. And he said that this chili is like 1,000 times hotter than jalapenos.
Whoa.
Naga chili.
I'd like to see that.
Yeah, so the plant is still small. So if I don't bring it inside when the weather gets really cold, it will die because chilies are hot weather plants. But yeah, it's one of those things that I have to pick and choose which one. Some plants are able to overwinter, some plants are not. We still have quite a few green tomatoes. So if the frost hits, then those tomatoes are going to be fried green tomatoes.
You
Do you
think you'd
have
be
any
able?
prediction for what the coming months are going to hold? Do you have any feeling for what the quarantine is, how it's going to develop, if we'll go back to the quarantine or if things will keep opening?
You know, I have my concern, of course, because it's been forewarned by a lot of health experts that there will be a second wave because flu season is just right around the corner. And my take is we need to be vigilant about the possibility of the second wave. And we don't know whether or not this virus is going or already has mutated into something else, just like influenza A, B, C, etc. So hopefully, you know, we will, or the health expert would find a solution before it gets worse. So my hopes is that everybody, it's not just me, but everybody is community at large to stay vigilant and take appropriate action. You know, we've gone through this global storm, basically, you know, of pandemic. So we need to be vigilant about the possibility and, you know, try to stay healthy, basically, because the likelihood of having a second wave is pretty high. And I hope I am wrong, but it's better to be healthy than not. So that's my hope.
Has the gardening been your main pastime during the quarantine?
Yes, gardening, attending Brentwood programs, events, online events. You know, I do a lot of that. Reading the books. Many of them I ended up reading the digital version or listening to the digital version of the books. And then, you know, we met. Julia Lane is the one who is in charge of this book club. And I enjoy, you know, mostly the nonfiction one. I like nonfiction books now more than the fiction books. So,
Julia's, that's been a great book club that she's been doing.
yeah, yeah. The books that she's had also, you know, is in conjunction with nature, with the environment. And that is something that resonates with me.
It almost sounds corny when I ask this question, so I'm almost a little reluctant to ask it. But because it almost seems lofty to a degree, but if there was anything you would want to say to a future generation, whether it be someone listening to this 100 years from now that has no idea about what's going on contemporarily and they hear about the COVID quarantine, do you think there would be anything that you'd want them to know?
Oh, yeah. Number one, resilience is important, especially during the pandemic. Especially people who actually got COVID. Many of them felt that the emotional toll of having to go through the disease caused by COVID virus was most of all psychological. So your body is sick and feeling bad in general. It's making the immune system low. So resilience is important to fight the disease, to not give up. And I know it's horrible because I knew several people that passed on because of this. And one of them is actually a Brentwood library member. And I have felt so sad because of it. And it's easy for me to say, you really have to be resilient. But based on the stories that I've heard from the survivors, they say you have to fight it. You have to be willing to just exercise your breathing. You have to move your hands, move your feet whenever you can, and don't just succumb to just wanting to sleep, because if you don't fight back, then they will take advantage of your body being weak. So my message for the future generation is be resilient. Also be able to actually be sensitive of other people's condition. Some people feel that this disease is made up or whatnot, and the reality is we have the statistics, and the statistics, even if they miss, it's not that. I mean, it happened. People passed away because of it. And so we cannot have the attitude of saying, well, I don't care because I'm young. It doesn't work. You really have to pay attention and be caring of people around you. If you're not wearing mask, or if you're not paying attention to the hygiene and things like that, it will come to bite you one day. And you don't want to be the person that caused harm to others. So heed the guidelines. The guidelines may not always be accurate. It may change from time to time, and that is to be expected for something that's new. My hope is for the new generation to stay strong, stay healthy, and care for one another, even at the time when it seems hard.
I'm so glad that you were able to join us, Tuty. This has been a great talk that we had.
Good. I hope I answered the questions and I didn't go off track.
Oh, no. And if there's anything that you wanted, if there's anything that we didn't ask you about that you wanted to add, you can.
No, I just, I want to invite everybody to really actually be more active in the seed library program. I would like the library to also expand the seeds, not to just the food type of seeds, but also flowers to attract the pollinators. So that would be wonderful. Herbs that can heal us, herbs that can also be the pollinator. For example, echinacea, it's a native in many states in North America, including New York. And that's one of immune support plant. So it'll be wonderful if the seed library program can be expanded to there. I mean, we're new, right? So hopefully in the coming years, we can expand.
In the coming year, it's going to be even better. It's going to be, We're going to have the flowers and the herbs and maybe more things.
Yes, it'll be awesome.
Definitely.
Okay.
So
I think we can call it an evening here. Tuty, thank you so much for joining us.
my pleasure.
Thank you again to Tuty for sitting down with me and Peter. And thank you to all of you listening at home. We hope you visit us again soon. And thank you as always to the Brentwood Historical Society for making this podcast possible. Today's music is brought to you by Dr. Turtle. You can find his music and other tracks at freemusicarchive.org.